Guys, welcome back to part two of the presentation on MEIC. Sorry about the interruption. And I'm going to post this as part two. So those of you who are attending the presentation can just view this part. You don't have to watch the whole video for the rest of it. But I will be posting a video on the previous parts of the presentation. So where we ended up was just looking at Option Omega's back tester, and I was pretty much finished with what I was going to go through there. I will share some sample setups on uh, Groups.io, so you can check there for what's posted related to this meeting, and I'll put whatever is some of these links that I've talked about and some of the files I've talked about. So the next part of the presentation, I'm going to talk about the automated platforms. There are basically two main platforms that I hear people using. There are some others, and I'll mention those. I just don't know much about them because I haven't used them myself. But Trade Automation Toolbox is one, and the cost of that is $49 for up to 5 iron condors, $99 for up to 20 iron condors, and this is per day. And so if you do 6 entries per day, that you're basically doing 6 iron condors times however many contracts you're doing. So if you do 2 contracts times 6, it'd be 12 iron condors. 3 contracts would be 18 iron condors, and you could still fit all that within the $99 a month cost. Once you go above that, you probably need to do the 149 for up to 40 iron condors or $229 a month for unlimited contracts. And Trade Automation Toolbox works on interactive brokers, Tradier, TradeStation, and Mexum, which is a European broker, not available to those of us in the US. But Kyle Leesman, who runs Trade Automation Toolbox, has done a good job of getting some other brokerages besides Interactive Broker when we found out that the slippage was so high compared to other brokers and the fees were so high at Interactive Broker. So he's done a good job of finding us some other options and design upgrading TAT to work with those. So you should be able to sign up for any of those on the website, which is www.tradeautomationtoolbox.com. Then another alternative is Trade Steward, and I use both Trade Automation Toolbox and Trade Steward. Trade Steward's model is based on the number of bots you use rather than the number of contracts you trade. And so it's $100 a month for 8 bots, 140 for 15 bots, and 250 for 30 bots. And generally, you'll need 2 bots per entry, one for puts and one for calls. So if you have 6 entries, you'll need 12 bots, and you could do that for the 149 a month, and that's regardless of the number of contracts you trade. So you can, if you do 6 entries on MEIC, you can do that with for the $140 a month price range. And right now, Trade Steward works on Schwab and Tasty Trade, and it may also work on Tradier. I'm not sure. I know they were working on that, but you might check their website. And again, that's tradesteward.com if you want to look up the website. So, and then Option Omega is in beta testing. I don't think they've rolled it out to the public. That's going to be a flat fee of $2.99 a month or $2,999, sorry, $2,999 annual, roughly $3,000 a year. So that's equivalent to what these cost if you multiply that times 12 months, the 2,900 and 2,500. So they're all about in the same price range. This may be a little bit higher, but it works with Tradier. Tasty Trade, and I think they have a Schwab version working with Thinkorswim. It is in beta testing, and I have not traded on it. I have access to it, but I just haven't gotten it going yet. I haven't traded it at all, so I really can't make any judgment or provide any information about it. There's a Discord group for all of these. If you sign up, you will get access to the Discord group for each of these, which is a good help in in asking questions, or if you run into a roadblock and don't know how to do something, usually somebody on the website or the Discord group will help you out. Then just a comparison between Trade Automation Toolbox and Trade Steward is Trade Automation Toolbox, I think, is very easy to set up and easy to use. There's Trade Steward is a little more complicated just because it is uh, it is more flexible for other strategies besides MEIC. Trade Automation Toolbox was designed for MEIC, and they've added other strategies like you can sell uh, put spreads, call spreads, flies, calendars, things like that with it now. But its main use, or most of the users trade MEIC on it. Trade Steward was designed for any strategy, so not necessarily for MEIC. And so it is more flexible, but it is more complicated because of that. But still, all of them are relatively easy to learn. Uh, Question about where does the program reside? Trade Automation Toolbox resides on your computer or on a remote server. And many of us have put it on a remote server so that we can it can be running at all times, regardless of what, if our computer is on or off or we're traveling, it can always be running. And I use Windows 365 as a remote server, and it's, I think, $49 a month, $45 a month, something like that. So add the cost of that to the price of Trade Automation Toolbox. Trade Automation Toolbox is a little difficult. You can't run it on multiple devices. You can only run it on one location. So that's why we put it on a remote server, because you can access that remote server from various devices, like using a remote desktop on your iPhone or on your computer, and you can access that remote server. And they can help you set that up too, because we've all had to go through that process. And there's some documentation on that, and you can ask questions in Discord about how to do that. Trade Steward is set up differently. It is web-based, and it's very accessible for multiple devices. I can sign in on my iPhone or my iPad or multiple computers because it resides on the web, and they are responsible for keeping that up and running. So there is the danger of that program going down, but that is Trade Steward's responsibility to manage that. So they usually, if I haven't had it go down while I've been using it for the past roughly 6 months, but that is a possibility. Then documentation on each of those. Trade Automation Toolbox it's a very good documentation. It's available on the website once you sign up for Trade Automation Toolbox. You can't access it before that, but it leads you through how to set it up step by step at each of the brokerages that it's applicable to. How to connect your account at the brokerage, what you need to plug in, just step by step how to set it up. And then it goes step by step through all of the options available on the program. Trade Steward is set up a little bit differently. The instructions are in the bots. There's a little question mark next to each feature, and you just tap on that question mark and the instructions pop up. And that's pretty good. It describes pretty well what each function does, and they've just started making some videos too to help people get started. And I haven't viewed those videos, but it's good that they're doing that because I think that would have been helpful. What I did is just found another user, and they were willing to share their bots with me so I could use them as a guide for what they made for their decision process, and they were trading MEIC as well. Um, and I'm willing to do the same for both of these. And in fact, I'm going to upload to the Groups IO setups that I'm using for both Trade Automation Toolbox on Tradier, and I'll show my setup that I used to use on Trade Automation Toolbox at IBKR, if any of you are using that. There's just slight differences based on some of the differences in the brokerage. So not many, just one that I can think of offhand is, since IBKR can accept stops on the spread, you don't need to know what to do with the long. You can just close the long as soon as you can. But with Tradier, you're setting the stop on the short leg only because Tradier sends those orders directly to CBOE. And if you recall, CBOE does not accept stops on spread. So it's got to be a stop on the short leg. And so there's the decision or what you need to do with the long leg once you're stopped out of the short leg. And there is an option to click on the Tradier version of Trade Automation Toolbox to how to handle if you want to sell that long leg or whether you want to reuse it on a future trade, what you want to do with that long leg. Flexibility for various strategies. I'd say Trade Automation Toolbox is good for that. I would say Trade Steward is excellent for that. It's, if you want to trade other strategies with Trade Steward, it's very well designed for a variety of strategies. The use for MEIC, I think Trade Automation Toolbox is probably a little bit better because it was designed for that. And so it understands you want to enter both legs. You want to manage the legs separately, some of the decisions, the stop multiple and things like that. Trade Steward is good, but there are some quirks, like how you handle stops, that are a little bit cumbersome. It doesn't use the stop multiple, it uses a percentage, which is essentially the same thing. But it's just a little bit more awkward to use for MEIC, but it's doable. I've been using it for 6 months. Then the organization and setup for Trade Automation Toolbox, I think it's well organized and it's a simple setup. So I'll show you, they keep the templates, they call them templates and not bots. So the templates, you create a template and then the schedule is separate from the template, so that you can assign particular times of when you want to enter the template. And you can have, one template, or you can have several templates that you're using. Like I have a template for morning entries, which has a little higher credit, and afternoon entries that has a little lower credit. And so I can trade the higher credit ones in the morning entries and the lower credit in the afternoon entries. And I've been adding some bots in this market to widen out or to pay more for the long leg so it's not so far out of the money. But I'll show you that. And it's in the template that I'm going to share with you. And then the organization of Trade Steward is a little bit more complicated in that all of the controls for your trade are within the bot. So the entry time, the price you want to get, your stops are all controlled within that bot. And so it means that, because of that, anytime you change one of those controls, like entry time, it means you create a separate bot. Or if you want to trade puts versus calls, you have to create two separate bots. Now, there is a way to create a bot for entering an iron condor and then managing each leg separately, but there's some limitations on the stops when it does that. It does not allow the STD stop on that. It only allows an algo stop, and that's their version of a stop limit order. Um, so it requires more bots when you're setting up Trade Steward, and of course they charge by the bot. So it does, it kind of your costs kind of creep up depending on how many bots you create. And you can create as many bots as you want. It only charges you for the active bots. So it checks, and as long as you have less than say 20 active bots, and that's what you're paying for, then you're good. If you create more than that, it'll pop up with a message that you've got too many bots. You need to reduce the number to be within your category, or you need to increase uh, the subscription that you're assigned to and pay more so you can create more bots. Then stop setup, I think it's very simple in Trade Automation Toolbox, but there's not as many features. With Trade Steward, there's tons of features, almost too many for me, but there are a lot of features in setting up that stop. But realize that's associated with the bot. Now, yeah, one of the things I have down here is editing on the fly. Editing stops on the fly is easy in Trade Automation Toolbox because the stop price ultimately it just shows up on your dashboard and you can edit it. It doesn't affect the template you're using to create that trade. Trade Steward editing on the fly is more difficult, and it does depend on the type of stop. If you set a stop based on a dollar value, like you want to get out at $4 on all of your trades, something like that, then you can adjust that on the fly. But if you set it up as a stop multiple of whatever credit you get, you can't adjust that on the fly because that's a part of the bot. Now, dashboards for monitoring trades, I think the Trade Automation Toolbox is excellent, and you can customize the columns and where those columns are located and what you see, so that the things that are important to you to monitor, like what your stop is or what your initial credit was. It's very easy to make those visible, or what time you entered, or what time you stopped out, or what your slippage was. It tells you that. Trade Steward, their dashboard is cluttered with a ton of information. It's hard to read. It is a little bit customizable, I'll say, but within certain parameters, like major categories of what you show on the a dashboard, but not within the category of the trade. You get whatever they want to show you, and sometimes that's information you want, and sometimes it doesn't show you the information you need. So it's a little bit cumbersome. Um, the reporting for Trade Automation Toolbox is, I think it's very easy to look at how you did that day. It gives you the win-loss, the number of stops you had, um, kind of what your total PCR was, premium capture rate, those sorts of things. The reporting at Trade Steward is minimal information, and it's not always accurate. It seems like they're going back and forth between running calculations off of uh, uh, I'm running it on toss, and sometimes the information shown isn't 100% accurate. And they didn't even have the number of stops that you had hit in their platform initially. I made that suggestion, and they were willing to add that information because it was easy to add. But just simple things like that they don't have in their reports. There are further reports for all the trades you did that day and things like that are good. But as far as the dashboard itself, I think it's the dashboard and the reporting, it's a little bit cumbersome with Trade Steward. And part of this, I will say, is, I am not an expert in Trade Steward. I know more about Trade Automation Toolbox. So it could just be there's a feature I don't know about. It could be as simple as that. So if you do want to use Trade Steward, there is a good Discord, and you can get some feedback there. And I may need to just do a little more training on that. I talked about editing stops on the fly. And then can you close trades manually? Yes, on both. You can pick the trade and close it instantly. So if you end up with a strike that's very near the money, you can close that trade just with a simple click on that trade on the dashboard. And then support, I will say Trade Automation Toolbox is good. Trade Steward, I would say, is excellent. There's a guy that's constantly monitoring Discord and various Discord groups. Like he monitors comments made about Trade Steward in Quantum Options Discord group. So he's kind of constantly aware of what people are talking about. He has some help, so it enables him to do that. And but he's very quick at getting back to you with an answer. And there are also lots of other good users on the Discord that will answer the question. Trade Automation Toolbox, it's one guy monitoring. He was the developer, and it's probably better. I mean, it's good if you ask a question and you can wait a while for the answer. It's not so good if you need an answer instantly. You may or may not get that instantly. So that's the downside of the support at Trade Automation Toolbox. Now, he has created some support tickets and things like that that helps him, track and find the questions that people have. So maybe that's getting better with the support question box that he has added. And then I would say things to look at because I know there's other platforms out there like the Option Omega platform. Option Alpha has a platform. There's Whisper Trades has a platform, and I just haven't traded those, so I don't know how good they are for trading MEIC or trading in general. I looked at Option Alpha, and it just didn't have some basic features that I needed to trade MEIC. Like it didn't have a way to select a premium when I'm entering a trade. I could only select a delta to sell. So that was a downside for that. And there's also here's some other things to look into when you're evaluating automated trading platforms. Think about the information you need to trade your strategy, like your entries, entry times, how strikes are selected. Can you select using premium or do you have to use delta? And then stop management is going to be very important. Do you have the flexibility to set stops on the spread or on the short leg and have the flexibility to adjust those stops after they are set? Does the software automatically convert stops on the spreads, if that's what you're using, to stops on the short leg once that long leg is worthless? Because if it's a stop is on the spread and there's an untradeable leg as part of that spread, and it's usually that long leg that goes to zero, and if you can't trade that, it won't ever stop you out of that spread. So this software automatically has to convert stops on the spread to stops on the short leg. Now, if you're trading just based on stops on the short leg, you don't have to worry about that. But that is something to look into if the broker and platform you're using uses stops on spreads. And then think about the technical issues that may exist on the platform. Like how often does the program check at the brokerage the status of your stops and if you've stopped out or what the price is, and that's going to report back on the dashboard. So some programs are a little slower, there's a delay. Some programs are very quick. I think Tradier and Trade Steward are both pretty good. I've heard of some programs that just check once a minute. Once a minute's too slow. Like if it breaks through my stop and hasn't stopped me out and I may need to take some action, getting that information a minute late, on a day like last Wednesday where we had basically a 300-point move in a minute period, that can make a huge difference in your trade. Understand whether stops are held on the platform, your automation platform, or whether they're held at the brokerage or whether they're held at the exchange. Some automated trading platforms hold a stop on the automated platform. So it has to stop out on your platform, then it gets sent to the brokerage, and then it gets sent to the exchange. So there's three steps there that can increase the amount of slippage that you had. So it's good to know where those stops are held. You don't want the stops being held on the automated platform. You want those stops to be held at either the brokerage or at the exchange, depending, we've discussed all that generally holding them at the exchange is better. But if your brokerage doesn't allow that and you want to use a certain brokerage, just make sure it's held at the brokerage. The reason is if your software goes down, or let's say your automated trading platform is on your computer and you lose the internet service, then you don't have any stops protecting your trade that's on at the brokerage if your stops are held on the platform. So that's just something to check when you're evaluating different automation platforms. And then look at how customizable is the software. How can you trade what you want to do with it, and how would you do that? Even if you have to subscribe for a month and kind of go through the process of setting it up, and then you realize, ooh, this just isn't going to do for what I need it to do, then you just stop your subscription. But it's better to have all that information than to be guessing what the software can do, or reading. Sometimes you read what's on the website, and it's, of course, they're going to give glowing reports and say it can do everything. Well, can it really, and can it do it in the way you want to do it? So just something to check into. And then I would also look at how good is the documentation about the use of the software, and how responsive is the support staff. So that's going to be important too. So here is an example of TAT, and this is, I've set up several templates, which is what TAT does, and I give them particular names based on, what information I need to know between, what's different about these. So I have different credit targets, and I have, here's one for just puts, and I have one that I created the last few days when we've had these big moves, that I realized my long option, it wasn't filling on a couple of trades because for 80 wide, that long option was costing more than I had allowed in my template. And so I created a separate template for a higher price of long for these days where we've got, the VIX over 40. And once VIX reverts down to 30 or less, I'll probably go back to using these original templates. And the prices, like I'll create templates with different prices, like $1.15 to $1.75. I had one for $1.25 to 85, and I usurped that and just made that my high long because I needed to do that quickly. I need to go back and adjust that, so I resave this as the credit of 125 to 185. So I've got that template again. And I may do that on the fly right here, and then I'll have it done. So there's the list of templates, and I'll show you how to edit those. And then we've got the scheduled trade. So this is, I enter, like if I want to add a time, I just say add and set the time, set the template I want to trade at that time, set the quantity, and I can activate and deactivate them, like disable or enable them right here. So if, for some reason, things have been real squirrely in the morning, I may cancel or disable these morning entries and just trade the afternoon entries. And you can also set up what days of the week to trade. I have these set up to trade every day as long as the uh, platform is on, and then what strategy it is. And I just list the MEIC short leg stop because that's how that platform is, or that template is set up for that schedule. So then to get into the template, I'm going to download these samples to Groups.io, as I said, but here's the sample I'm going to show has two templates set up for using wide spreads. And I realize this may be a little hard to read. Let me see if I can zoom in Yeah, I can zoom in and scroll around to, because I know it's hard to read on Zoom. Um, let's see. Oh, here, let's see. Oh, not so good. Let's see. Nope. Boy, that jumps screens. Okay. Well, I have a, there we go. There we go. So the template, you assign a name that you want that's descriptive. And I have TR for trade year, MEIC for the strategy, and then the credit target, because I generally set everything else up the same. You can select the symbol to trade. You can select what trade type, iron condor or fly or put credit spread or put debit spread, whatever you want to trade, and then stop price basis. And I have the stop price set on the short price. So I'm trading the short leg on this one. And then, in fact, I may just go to let's see. I'm going to go to Tradier, I mean to TAT, and just look at this live so that I can go through it a little bit better. So here's the list of templates. It was this one that I wanted to edit, so I'll just do it on the fly. So I have that. Let's see. Let me go back just a second because, yeah, I'm going to duplicate this. So I want to create a template, but it's just going to be the 125 to 185. And then there's the symbols you can trade SPY, QQQ, and SPX. I use SPX. And then there's all the various strategies you can use on TAT. So, and he's been adding strategies, and that just sets up the legs, and then you select the stops and things like that. So, and then stop price basis. If you hover over that name, a little box comes up, and then it says for iron condors, and let me make that come up again. For iron condors, you could choose to calculate the stop prices based on the average price, average fill for the put and call spreads, resulting in matching stops. Or you can do it on the short leg uh, or the spread. For other trades, let's see what it says. You can select the long or short leg price fill only. So here's the selection. You can use exact price. So that would mean on the spread, the average price, like what I used to do is because I can't control the entry credit, but I can control the stop a little bit. I would use average price. So if I got, say $3 for one side and $2 for the other side, it would set the stop on both sides at 250 so that the risk was still the same on both sides. And that worked pretty well, but it had the disadvantage of sometimes it would stop out a trade earlier than it should have stopped out, and otherwise it might have gone on to expiration and been fine. So but now with stops on the short leg that I'm using at Tradier, because they don't allow stops on spreads, I set the stop on the short price only. So then I select the put strike selection, and you can select what kind of, if you want to select it on credit or delta or short credit. I'm using the credit for the whole put spread, and my target minimum is 125, my target maximum is 185, and I'm using these for afternoon entries. I'm giving a little higher price, or sorry, for morning entries, I give it a little higher price in the morning because you can get a little more credit in the morning. And then you can select how you want it to select that price. Do you want it to kind of aim for the highest credit, like as close as it can get to the 185? Do you want it to aim for the mid credit, like 150 roughly, or 160 for both of these? It may not, maybe close to 155. Or the lowest credit, like aim for 125, but go as high as 185. You can use a narrow width, a wide width, and depending on some of these, some other boxes may pop up. But I'm going to set it on the highest credit, and it's set on the spread of that credit spread. And you can also select a distance out of the money, and it says it right there, indicate how many points out of the money a strike must be to be considered for a trade. And then this can be used to prevent entries that you feel are too close to the money. Use a negative value if you want to allow trades in the money. So I just set that as 0, and just pay attention to where my trades are based on the credit target I'm going. And then the put and call ratio, you could trade, you know, 2 calls for every put. If there's some skew, you can do more calls than puts and adjust it that way. I choose not to. I just do a 1-to-1 and go with the same credit target. So that's generally going to get my calls a little closer to the money and my puts a little further away from the money based on this credit target. So just, if you want to do it differently, you're welcome to. This is just how I have it set up, but things to consider. And then for the long strike selection, that's the short strike collection selection. So it's the short strike would be within 125 to 185. And then the long, normally I have this set on, remember we changed the name and I'm editing this. That normally that was a high long because I found these trading days when VIX is up to 40, I needed that maximum long to be a little bit higher to get these trades to fill. But in normal circumstances, I have it the maximum premium from 5 to 20 cents and go a maximum width of 100 to get that. Now, if your trades start not filling, then it's not able to find trades that meet this category, or meet these parameters. So you may have to adjust this and just look at an option chain and see what it takes to get in a trade and use that information to set up these premiums. And then I'm always trading 0 DTE. There are other options there that it will trade. And the maximum and minimum entry price, if you want to set one, I don't, because I generally want to get in a trade. As long as it's meeting these parameters, I'm figuring it's finding the best trade it can that meets these parameters. But, if you don't want to get in a trade less than $1, you could set a minimum price and then it just wouldn't enter a trade. If it can't find a trade for 125 to 185 or anything down to $1, it wouldn't enter. Or say maximum if I don't want to get in a trade over $2. And, sometimes this might get me in, that combination of factors might get me in at $2. So I just take that chance. Then the stop configuration, uh, there are the stop market order is this might be related to which brokerage you're set up on. So I am set up on Tradier, and in the settings, it's where you set the brokerage and your account number and things like that. Um, but the stop configuration, the only option here is either none or a stop market order because that's what Tradier allows. And I have it set on the short leg, so that's the only thing that's allowed. Then I have it set, you can either set it as a dollar value or a multiple of the premium that you're getting. So I set it for a multiple of 1, and then I get it, and that is a 1x net loss, a stop to get a 1x net loss. And I use an offset to go a little bit lower than that. Now, I did have that set to 10 cents until I was using the stop on the short leg, and I increased that a little bit to, if I'm using a 5 to 20 cent premium, I'm basically using that offset from a 1x to account for that premium for the long. And then based on that, we've talked about that and how to set the stop on the short leg and how to calculate that. And then the trigger is the only option at Tradier is last or single bid. Now, at other brokerages, you have other options. You may get bid or ask or mid price or last or some other thing. Then also, because the stop is on the short leg, you have to tell TAT what to do with the leftover long leg after you're stopped out. You could ignore it and keep that long leg, and then you just need to close it manually or watch it. I choose to just have the program sell it as soon as it can. And because it's happening after you stopped out, and if the market is moving in that direction, often you'll get a good price for that long, and sometimes, maybe not a great price. Like if you're trading manually and you see that that stock is moving in the direction of your long, you can hold off exiting that long until sometimes you can recoup your loss in the movement of that long option. So that you can do that in manual trading, but in TAT, I just choose to sell it, and then you can set up various profit targets and adjust the stop toward the end of the day, like at an hour before close. You can do various things. I don't do that anymore. I've stopped adjusting my stops toward the end of the day. Here's the profit target. I don't do anything with that. And if you do choose to use these, you can read through it. It talks about each of these specifically in the documentation on the website. And then this talks about, if you want a timed exit, like you want to stay in the trade for an hour or 3 hours, or exit this trade at, uh, an hour before the close, you can enter the exit time there. Or if you've got a multiple day strategy on and you want to exit at 21 days, you could enter it right there. And the closing order, various conditions. I haven't used the time to exit, but read through the explanation in the documentation. And then if you want to re-enter, there's some setups for that. I don't re-enter trades. People ask me that all the time. And to me, it's kind of built into the MEIC strategy because you have multiple entries. So if I get stopped out of one, I've got 5 other trades that are going to be on by the end of the day. Then the last thing here is fill progression. How much do you want to try to fill this, and like how often do you want it to adjust the price? I have it try to fill twice and wait 5 seconds and then adjust the price 5 cents. Now that may or may not work, and sometimes it just doesn't fill in that time. So I may come to the template and change that. If it's not working, then I could adjust that and make a 10-cent adjustment. But you really don't know. You're just taking your chances. Every time it runs the bot, I mean the template, it runs through all these parameters. So after it's tried twice, and you could do any number of attempts to retry. I just think about how do I do it when I'm manually trading. Like I'll watch it, and um, if it's in 5 seconds, if it hadn't filled, I may adjust my strike, or I may adjust the price. And so I try to mimic that in this trade template. So the number of attempts, how long to wait, and what adjustment I want to make. So I increase the price by 5 cents. And then you can name the strategy here, and you can sort by strategy name in the report. So that's helpful there. And then I am going to save this template. I think it's all set up the way I want. And yeah, so I'll save that template. So now I have my 125, 180, and then I have my 125, 180 high long, and like we talked about. Now, a couple of other things to note. One important thing is here's where it connects with a API key for your account, and that's the instructions tell you how to get that key. And then here's where you set the market timing, or you coordinate the TAT clock with your local clock. So you enter the time the market closes here, and and then it uses that for the timing the entry. And then you can have it notify you when a trade is open, send you an email, or if the trade is stopped out, send you an email. I have all that disabled right now, just because I'm pretty much monitoring it uh, live. But if I go traveling or something, I may give it my email and, I want to know if I get stopped out. I don't, I'm assuming it got in some trades, but I more want to know how many stop outs I have. And then, um, some safety features. If there's a missing stop, it sends me an email, like something's wrong with the stop. It sends me an email that I need to take some action, just some safety. And I don't use, or haven't used webhooks yet, but there's a way to do that. So you can trade based on, some indicator that you like to use, Bollinger Bands. If it gets to the low band of the Bollinger Band and bounces off of it, you want to enter a long position. You could use a webhook to do that. Then there's the appearance of what's on here, and I'm going to scroll through this, what's on the screen, like if it's a dark theme or a light theme like this. I tend to prefer light themes. Here you can set what to do with the long strike, like if you just ignore it or if you want to reuse it for a new entry. Now, why he has that in the settings box, I don't know. Seems like that would make more sense to put that in with the template, but that's the way it is. So I just ignore it because I'm closing that as part of the template. And then some of these others, like I want to trade SPX. I don't want to trade these others, so I just put SPX. And there's a daily profit target. If you say you want to close all trades when you've reached a profit target of $500, you could do that here and then save your settings. And then the reports are here, and you can do a report. I'll do last month, which was pretty good. And it tells you, how many trades expired, how many stops hit, and it shows you a little graphic of that. It tells you what your average slippage was, average premium you got for March. I think this is, yeah, March 1st to the 31st, 162. Here, I'll do this month, and you can see the difference. I'm down this month a little bit. I didn't trade last week, but I traded the week before that. So I'm down a little bit. My average slippage was, a half of, or minus 45. I think that's 45 cents. So minus means good. It's profit in my pocket. But the way they calculate that is a little weird. And if you want to get into that, send me an email and I'll explain it to you. It's a little strange. And Kyle is supposed to be working on that. He hasn't gotten that set up yet. It tells the total fees I spent that month on trades, or this month so far. I just traded through the 4th. I haven't traded any further than that. So, and there are 3 trading days and number of wins and losses. So the reporting is pretty basic. The dashboard is here, and when there's trades, you can minimize this and you get more room for your strikes and your quantity. You can right click here. I think you can, maybe it's on here. Yeah, you can select the column chooser. And so if you don't want, what the open price is or your profit, or there's some other things that you can show here. I have it set up for what I use, but there's the symbol. I don't show the symbol because it's all SPX. I don't show the expiration because I'm using all 0 DTE. But there are some other things you can show here if you want. And these are the things that I generally show. I don't use profit target, so I don't want to show that. But I do want to see if it closed, what the slippage was, what the close time was, and what the status of the trade is. So it'll say open, closed, or pending. And then the schedule task in the morning, this will populate with what templates I have set to trade that day. So that's pretty good. So you can see what's coming up. When it's working on a trade, it's working to find a trade, that will change from waiting to working. And then once it's filled a trade, that will say complete. but it'll have a list of all the trades that are coming up um, for you to trade. And then to connect to Tradier, right now it's disconnected. I would just click on connect to Tradier. And I always set this to managing stops. I think if that's, you have to read the documentation. I've kind of forgotten what that means. Like it may not manage the stops if you don't have that clicked. I'm not sure. But here you can click on a particular trade in your list and close the trade right there. Or you can click on a particular trade and set the stop to something different than it's set here. So like I do that on the short leg. As that long leg decays, I can adjust that stop downward, and so I end up at basically a 1x stop on the short leg. And so let's see. And close all trades, that's kind of your panic button. That will close all the trades you're in at wherever they are at the moment. So that might work if something weird happens and you just want to get out. That's get me out button. So that's basically it for Trade Automation Toolbox. I will say one thing. Sometimes when you click on these, like reports or the desktop, it ends up with the color bars inside a gray circle. If that happens, just minimize the screen and then re-maximize it, and that usually fixes that. It's just a graphic problem. And just something to be aware of. So I'm going to close this, and now I'm going to go to Trade Steward and show you how Trade Steward is set up. This is Trade Steward's um, dashboard, and you can modify it in in account settings. So you can have it by default, it's going to come up showing a profit chart of your daily trades. I don't want to see a profit chart. I want to see the details of the trade. And so yeah, here was where it showed intraday chart. Um, I have this kind of set so I get it down to the things I want to see. Like I want to see how much buying power I'm using. I want to see how many open trades and if you have stopped out trades, it'll add a line how many trades stopped out. So that's helpful that, if I see five of my trades stopped out or whatever, it stops it out. Here's a list of the scheduled bots, and they're not currently in a trade, and this isn't connected to my broker as of right now. That by the little red dot, I can see that I'm not connected. But if I was connected and if it was a trading day, and let's say I got filled on one side of these calls for $3 and the other side for $1, and I was in five contracts for each, then I have, five times $3, 15, uh, $1,500 at risk on one side, but only 500 on the other side. Well, I may want to add some puts on the downside on the put side so that I've got equal amount of money at risk. Or I can close one of the call spreads, that one of the higher side spreads to get those more in line. And you can do that right here. Like the launch now is like an instant trade order, and it will use that bot. And I just enter quantity to enter. So if the market was open, I would hit launch trade. I'm going to hit never mind since I don't want to do that. But that's kind of how you do an instant trade or an instant. This will disable the bot, but once you're in a trade, you can close it. So I can't really show that to you here. But kind of what these are, I guess you could do a chart of the performance of the bot. You can look at bot activity, like it will show, all the recent, this is April 1st, the entry times and the trades it got me in and what price it got me in at and where it stopped out, that kind of thing. So that little clipboard always tells you lots more detail. It looks like the stop will disable the bot, and that pencil means you want to edit the bot. Now, I usually go to bots to edit my bot. So I'm going to go to view bots. And this is a list. This is where I talk about how, you got to set up a bot for every parameter. If it's different than another bot, you got to set up another bot. So like if you want to trade puts or calls, like enter at 9:30, 9:30 Central Time, and on the calls and 9:30 Central Time on the puts, two different bots. These are enabled, so these are kind of the active bots. You set your quantity here. You can also do that inside the bot, but you can override it here. So if that's the only thing you need to change from one day to the next, then you can just do it here. But this gives you a brief summary of what's in that bot, like what my credit is for the short option, and what the credit target is for the long option, where my stop is. And I have it set at 80% stop, because I have it set on the short leg only. So instead of setting it for the short and the long, I'm getting out a little bit early and running into the mess of maybe getting out early, but it's maybe costing me some. So I kind of go back and forth as I have more trades and more data to evaluate, is that getting me out where I want to get out, or is it getting me out too early and I'm losing money just because I'm getting out too early? I can adjust that as I need to as I get more data. So here's how I would edit the bot. Come over here. You can either click on the name or you can click on the pencil to edit the bot. I'm just going to click on the name, and then that bot comes up, and there's the bot name. I can change the bot name. I can copy this to a new bot. I can edit this bot. I can create a new bot based on this. I can create tranches for this bot. So all kinds of different things. And here in this bot, all the documentation is in the question marks. So a lot of this is kind of self-explanatory, or you can just try it and see what happens. But if there's any question about what it is, it will tell you, like, strategy assignment. Like I think it's with so many bots, how you name your bots becomes critically important, because you're going to see a list of those bots like here. And so you want some name that tells you what's going on or which bot that is. And so we're going to go back to view bots, and I'll edit those. So whoops, sorry. I think I hit that button. Nope. What did I do? Mm-mm-mm. I clicked on something I didn't mean to click on. Well, view by strategy. Let's do multiple entry iron condor. Get bots. What happened? Enable bots. Get bots. Uh-oh. What happened? Yeah, that's the one I want. View bots. Maybe I'm okay. What happened to? So that's the EMA. Not. It's not an active bot. None of these are active bots. I'm sorry. What happened that I? Okay, here's some of the. Let me sort by active and see if that. Um, well, sorry, I'm at a loss here. This is what I mean when it's more complicated. I've got a ton of bots, and view by account, view by strategy, view by bot status. I want to see enabled, and view by entry day, any, view by symbol, webhooks, no, get bots, and it's showing no data. Okay, well, um, hmm. I don't know what the deal is. It's still listing those bots here. Go back to view bots. Well, let me see if I can find the bot I was looking at in the list. 2, 130, yeah, 12, 10. For some reason, it just, yeah, just didn't. Okay, so we'll just look at this one instead. So here you assign it a strategy and you can create a new strategy here, give it a name that you want to sort by. So I had, different bots that some I got from other people, some were METF, some are Iron Condor, some I was trying an algo stop on, some is just set up with a 1x stop, just different strategy names based on how I wanted to support it. And then whether the bot is enabled or not, that means whether it's ready to trade. If the market was open and I enabled trading, this bot would enter. And I can disable it if I want to keep the bot, but I just don't want it to enter. And then any change I make on this, I need to hit update. And there's an update or reset or cancel or test run here and at the bottom of the editing screen. And so I list the underlying I want to trade and what this bot is going to apply to. The trade type, I'm doing a vertical spread. So there is a way to do a condor, but it manages it different than I want to manage my MEIC strategies. So the number of legs, 2 legs, a short and a long. Skip the AM expirations. I have that enabled so I don't accidentally get in a monthly option when I only want to do 0 DTE options. And then sell the bidless longs on trade exit. So I've got that enabled. So if I get stopped out, it sells if it can, the longs. And I just have that enabled. And then efficient spreads, let's see what efficient spreads will dynamically adjust the long legs to get the closest to the money strike that has the same mark price as the target leg. For example, your target leg definition selected a 4,300 put, but a 4,340 put had the same current mark price, and the system would use the 4,340 strike instead of the 4,300 strike. Efficient spreads will adjust long strikes only for premium with max widths, percent in or out of the money, points, vertical width, and strike. So it's pretty descriptive about what it does. And and then when there's lots of options here, like how you want to set your premiums when you're entering the trade, it gives you a descriptive list of what each of those is and does, and excuse me, how to set that up. I always use premium. I don't use delta. Some people use delta to enter and exit. You can use exact price, like get me exactly $1.70, which means you're probably not going to enter a trade very often if uh, that short strike isn't $1.70. Whether this is a put or a call, this bot happens to be my call bot, so I have call set up, and this is the short leg. You can do a ratio. I have 1-to-1 ratio, the 0 days to expiration, and conflict resolution enabled. That's when you're trying to enter a spread and there already exists a position of the leg that this is trying to enter. What do you want to happen? So I want it to resolve that conflict and adjust the trade so that it avoids that conflict. So that's enabled. And then for the width, you set that up on the long leg strike, not the short leg strike, and it gives you a warning that of that. So that's where that's set up. So the short leg strike is set up for a premium of 5 cents on the call, and that's a little low right now, but up to 80 points wide, and entering calls. This is the long leg, ratio of 1, days to expiration exactly 0. I don't want to trade any other expirations. And then conflict resolution. So conflict resolution, here's how much it moves. If there is a conflict and it's trying to enter a spread on strikes you already own, and it's trying to sell one you own or buy one you've sold, then you tell it what to do, whether to move 5 points toward the money or 5 points away from the money, and just fill this out per the instructions there. And trade entry by bot settings, or you can enter trade by user settings. Like if if you want to trigger the trade, you just put user trigger, and then you've gotta go to the dashboard and say enter this trade whenever you want. I have it using the timed settings. So this I called my 10:30, that's Central Time entry for the calls. So my entry time this is always in Eastern Time. So that's another weird thing. Between Trade Automation Toolbox adjusts the whole platform based on your local time. Uh, Trade Steward doesn't. A lot of the data is based on Eastern Time, and you're going to have to know when to use Eastern Time and when to use basically you set everything up in Eastern Time. So my 10:30 entry for Central Time is set up to start at 11:31 and end 10 minutes later. So it's only going to try for 10 minutes to enter this trade. If it doesn't get an entry within that 10 minutes, it just skips the trade. Um, position size, I want it based on quantity. You could do it as a percentage of your buying power or the percentage of leverage you wanted to use. I don't. I just want to enter by quantity. And I keep track of is 5 trades, is that going to 5 contracts, is that gonna, and I'm doing 6 entries, say, both sides, is that going to keep me within the 2% maximum on my account? So I keep that I just enter the quantity there. And then here you adjust the number of days you want to enter. Like for a while, it just seemed like Thursdays were always losing days. So a lot of us just stopped trading on Thursdays. This would be a place where you could unclick Thursday and not trade Thursday if you wanted. So or if you just want to trade Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or something like that, you could do that. And then if no position or staggered days, I don't know what this is. Let's see. Allows reopening a new position at specified day intervals or allowed entering only if no position is open for the bot. So yes, if I already have a position for this bot, I don't want it to enter another position. So I don't have it on staggered days. But yeah, I just want it to enter once and not try again. And then there's these entry speeds, and this is how fast it adjusts the entry price. If it doesn't get filled immediately, what do you want to happen? Do you want to let it sit there a while? Do you want to try to replace it every 2 seconds or recalculate? Do you want to have it cancel and replace every 8 seconds, and how many tries? So you can just read through that for which one you want to use. I have it set to fast, and that seems to work okay. It cancels and replaces every 8 seconds, and and 3 tries before recalculating. So that has worked for me. It very rarely doesn't get in a trade. And if it does miss a trade, I can just enter it manually. And then sequential entry delay, I don't know, sets a cooling off time between the closing of a trade for a bot and a subsequent trade can be opened if still during the entry window. So let's say I enter a trade, um, I got stopped out. I have this, there was one setting for, yeah, don't enter if there's a position, so no position. But let's say I got stopped out in that 10-minute window. Then here's what you want, how many second delay before you enter a new trade. And I may want to adjust it, sets a cooling off period before a subsequent trade can be opened if still during the entry window. Yeah, so I may set it for, um, don't enter a new trade for a while. I need to look at that and make sure I have that set correctly. And then there's section on trade exit, and a lot of these boxes are contextual boxes, like depending on how you set up your stops or how you set up your entries, you'll get different boxes here or different options to click. So timed exit, there's an ability to enable that. Like if I enabled it, then some additional controls are going to pop up, but I don't want a timed exit. A profit target, if you wanted to set a profit target, then other boxes, I'm going to hit never mind. Other boxes might appear that would control those parameters. Same thing for any of these. Stop loss type, you could have no stop loss, a percent loss, which is basically like a stop multiple, a dollar loss, which, you could set it for get me out at $4 no matter what premium I get in. I'll take a $4. I want to pay $4 to get out. Underlying point move, like if the underlying moves 10 points, get me out. Or fixed delta, like if it goes to delta 40, get me out. Or relative delta, I'd have to look at what that is, but delta and relative delta. Relative delta is an offset from the opening delta. So if the delta changes, say 10 points or 20 points, you could set a stop on that. So there's lots of different ways you can set these stops. I use the percent loss and I use broker resting. Now, broker resting is STD in their category. Um, as best I understand it. Yeah, broker resting are always submitted as market orders. Broker resting stops are not available for underlying points, fixed delta, relative delta stops. Um, yeah, we'll submit the stop order to your broker as a standing stop order. And oh, here's where it has STD. I want to send it as STD because that will send it on to the exchange. And so you can use a bid ask trigger, which is a broker resting stop, but the STD is actually an exchange stop. As I understand it, even though here I may need to ask that question, even though here it says it's a broker resting stop. Um, all orders are submitted as good till canceled market orders. And then I have the stop based on, you can base it on the stop leg only or the entire trade. I think if you did the entire trade, that STD option would go away because you can't use STD on the spreads. Um, and then I have my stop set at 80% for this. And that just seems to get me out closest to a 1x stop once it closes the long side. And the side to stop out, short only, and what to do with the remaining legs after a stop. I have it set to the broker resting stop can close the opposite side legs from the resting stop. So I want it to close that automatically. And if it can sell that, it will. You can set up trailing stops here. I don't do that. And I'm going to post a sample. I do have a trailing stop set up on the ETF trade. Not sure that's the way I want to trade that, but it just shows a sample setup for that trailing stop. And then trade conditions, like I just want to enter one trade per day. I don't ever want to enter more. If on some of these other settings, I've set it to just enter, only if there's no position. So here, if I set it for max trade 2 and it stopped out, it would enter another trade. So I have set this so that it only enters a max of one trade on this. Uh, and using the number of contracts I've given it, but it's just one trade. Max concurrent trades, I don't want any, so that's not enabled. Max profit per day, I don't have that enabled. Don't have any of these things enabled. Then max price to enter, I have this enabled, but even so, I will still get some prices around 2 sometimes. So it's doing the best it can within all these parameters to find trades so that as you experience something that you don't expect, you can come in here and adjust some of these. Generally, I find this works pretty well. Um, check closings before opening. I don't even have that enabled. Only do a credit spread, and the opening quote sets the first tick or the 93005 tick as the underlying's opening quote for the bots parameter. I'm not entering trades right at the open, but so this probably really doesn't matter. Controls whether to use the first tick of the day as a tick for the underlying opening quote of the bot. This setting applies to all entry filters and open quote for the bot's trade. That seems to apply just to those early entries, but again, I may need to read more on that. But it's working okay the way it's set up. Then you can set bot dependencies, and this is, you would set this up if you wanted to trade EMA. Like I only want to enter if EMA is above or below, the 2040 EMA, you would set that. And I do have an EMA trade, a bot set up, a sample bot, and I'm gonna cancel this and I'm gonna go find an EMA bot. And there we are with our trades again. So somehow they're back. But let me find an EMA trade here. Here's an EMA. So these are the puts. So this is saying, I want to enter a put spread only if, and then I come down here, a lot of these are set the same, but the entry filter is enabled. So uh, the down here somewhere. Yeah. When underlying moving average crossover, I've got that enabled so that I'm using an exponential moving average, a 1 minute period, and I'm using a 520, 5 over 20 EMA. So when the moving average one is above the moving average two, and the market essentially is going up, I'm entering a put spread. So that's how that is set up. And then bot dependencies enabled. Oh, this is like if I'm in a call spread, don't enter a put spread. So, like I don't want to enter both trades. Um, so that's what this means, although I've experienced that it is. Uh, Interesting. But that's how you would block the other side. Like if you entered a put spread, you wouldn't want to, and let's say the market's kind of gyrating. Would you want to go ahead and enter a call spread too at this if it happens to the EMAs flip within the time period of when it's looking for a trade in that 10-minute time period, or would you want to ignore it? I think I have this set up to ignore it, so don't open trades when this bot is in a trade. And so I've got to keep track of what my other bots are named as. And it's just a lot to keep organized. So that's one reason I think Trade Steward, it's just more complicated. It is more flexible, but it is more complicated too. So, but that shows you the basics of that. And I'm going to hit cancel here. Um, but there are ways to like edit multiple bots, import bots. Like if someone sends you a bot, you can import that. Others of these, like create tranche bots. I haven't done that, but I've looked at it and there was, for some reason I didn't like it. So I don't remember specifically what it was. If it was, I couldn't control something, then I could better control it using individual bots. I use this. Bot setting history. You can look at your bot's performance. Uh, let's see, balance and profits over time. It'll give you a little chart. I don't know what that means. And I'm constantly editing my bot, so it may be meaningless for me. But I use this a lot. Just go to the bots and view bots. And then I can also sort by enabled bots so that I don't see and then you have to hit get bots over here. Then I don't see all the other bots that aren't enabled. Or I can select like METF bots, and I know all those are disabled, so I'll just say all, and then it shows me all the EMA bots. So I've got a bunch of those, and depending on, like, sometimes I'd set it up and see how the dollar stop worked, and instead of a percent stop, and just to test it out. So it kind of gives you a performance of how that bot has done. All-time P&L on all my EMA bots is bad because I didn't trade this very long, and I traded it. I think I was trading it in December and January, and it just wasn't performing very well. So that's going to be negative versus um, my MEIC bots are probably more positive. Let's see. So yeah, here's some P&Ls for that. So you can see those values. Like, I've done better with those. Some I haven't traded. It's a copy of a bot, and I was just doing that to test something out. There is a lot of information. You can view a trade log here and look at all the trades. And I did this. I typically haven't been recording. I think this records up the last 500 trades, and beyond that, 500 entries. So beyond that, it just starts filling up with new trades and throwing the older ones off the list. But I needed to go back and I was checking out the slippage based on the spread of these, and I had to go back and get the entry price and the closing price for all these trades. And so I haven't found a way to export it, but you can just highlight this and take it into an Excel file, and it automatically keeps these columns. So the poor man's way of creating an Excel file out of all this. So you'd think you could export this, but I haven't found a way. And maybe there is, and I just haven't found it. So I don't know. But that kind of goes over what I know and how I use it. And I'm going to share my some sample bots with you so you can, at least how I've got it set up, and it can be a starting point, and you can make different decisions, based on the credit or the stop or the number of contracts you want to trade, what your entry times are, all of the above that we've talked about. So I'm going to go back here to this presentation, and let's see. So that was on the last one, and this is oh, I'm still zoomed way in. So let me go back. So Trade Steward, um, this is what we talked about. I've got a slide for it, and I show some of the basic screenshots, but I showed you on that slide. So with Trade Steward, if you have a question, use that little question mark. For both of these, there's a good Discord group. You can ask questions, get prompt responses, and Trade Steward is adding videos. I haven't watched them, and that may help you get started as well. So with that, that's the end of the presentation that I was not able to finish this morning. So appreciate your patience, and hopefully you'll view this video. And if you have any questions, since this isn't live, feel free to email me at tamchambliss@gmail.com, TAMCHAMBLESS@gmail.com, and I'll answer them or get back to you as soon as I can. If I get a bunch of questions, it may take me a little longer to get back to you, but I will respond to your email at some point. So I appreciate your attention to this long presentation. Hopefully, if you're trading MEICs already, you learned something, or maybe it gives you some ideas of things to check out. Or if you're new to MEIC, maybe this will get you started. And it has been one of my most profitable strategies. And the nice thing about it is the drawdowns are very low, depending on how you set it up. So as we talked about it, you can have higher drawdowns or lower drawdowns. Kind of, you can design it to, 27% drawdown, 20%. I actually like to aim for less than 10% drawdown. So let's see where one of those was. I think there, yeah, the 40 or 50 wide spread had a lower drawdown just because it was entering fewer contracts. So it is a relatively safe strategy for investing. And even in this market, which is a choppy market, you can choose not to trade if it just, if the market's just real squirrely, you don't have to trade. Um, but if I would say this is a reasonable strategy for any market, and it's with the stops, it's going to protect you. There are always strange things that can happen. And I do want to share one incident that I heard about, and let me move this over, but that I heard about from a friend and this is the first instance I've heard of this. He was putting a stop on the short leg, and this was Wednesday when we had the big, like 300 point move in one candle, um, and up around 12:20 or so. He had 10 contracts, 10 short legs on a call spread. He was stopped out, but just got stopped out of 4 contracts. So he had to manually close the other 6 when he saw they didn't fill. And then, so because he got stopped out of his short leg, he closed his long leg. And then later, like the next day, Schwab called him and said, we just heard from CBOE that they busted that trade where you got out of your 4 short calls. So that means you had 4 short calls the rest of the day on Wednesday when the market was moving up so so high that day. And he had a huge loss in the 6 figures. And he basically we're trying to figure out what can he do about it. Because it was not a stop on a spread, they didn't bust the spread, they just busted the short leg, meaning he had not sold those short legs like he thought he had. And Schwab platform that day showed him that he had sold them, and that was the price he got. And he had 0 short legs on that strike. So like I said earlier, anything can happen in options, and crazy stuff happens. And I think probably what's going to happen with that, and you may hear about that trade on some of the boards, because we're probably all going to be talking about it and warning people that that can happen. But I think he's going to have to go to arbitration, because that it just wasn't fair that he wasn't notified. I don't know when Schwab found out, if they just waited to tell him till the next day, or CBOE didn't tell Schwab until the next day. I don't know. Or if CBOE told Schwab right after it happened, and Schwab just never reported it to my friend. So I don't know what happened. And I have contacted my contact at CBOE to say, hey, why did this happen? What happened? When did CBOE contact Schwab? Are we at risk by putting stops just on the short leg? If they can be busted and we've already sold our calls, it can make us vulnerable to, being naked 4 calls on a day when the market moves up, 500 points that day, and you've got 4 short calls on that are in the money, not good. So I wanted to warn people about that, and we don't have a resolution on that. And as I find out more information, and as I hear back from my contact at CBOE on what we can do about that, um, uh, more to come on this. But CBOE tells me your first step as a trader is always contact your broker when something weird happens. The broker has a contractual agreement with CBOE, and they're supposed to do each party is supposed to do certain things, and your broker is your representative to CBOE. So they are supposed to contact CBOE on your behalf. And another thing that's happening is Schwab basically told my friend that, sorry, it's between you and CBOE because CBOE busted the trade and we can't do anything about it. So I think that's incorrect, that Schwab needs to be talking to CBOE on my friend's behalf, on the trader's behalf. And CBOE has told us that's the proper process because CBOE doesn't have any contractual relationship with the traders themselves. That's the broker has the contract with CBOE. And and so there's nothing that CBOE can do for an individual trader other than through the brokerage. And so we're trying to go through the proper routes and find out what we can do and what recourse he has. Like, can, since he put it on as a spread, can they at least say, okay, we'll give you the price, the loss, full loss of the spread. That would be better than taking the full loss of those naked calls, which basically was his buying power in those calls. Not good. But just be aware, trading options can be risky. If in doubt, just get out. And, if something squirrely starts happening, don't be in denial before you take action. Just get out of the market and then call your broker, figure out what happened. And then you can always email me about something and I will, if I will help you decide what to do, whether I think it's best to just go through your broker. Usually that's the route. Or if something just really strange about that happens, I can contact my contact at CBOE and we can see what can be done about it. So with that, I'm going to stop the recording and thank you very much for attending and both part one and part two of this presentation. And I appreciate your attention. And if you have any questions, email me. And thank you very much.